All right, so hopefully, oh, I turn that volume down on that actually. Hopefully, you can kind of hear me there. For those of you who are new to this, just happened to found that this is going on tonight, you'll see a countdown on the screen at the moment. If you're not watching this live, which is 8 p.m. UK time on the, where are we, the 3rd of February 2020, do not sit there and watch the countdown timer. Jump forward to however far you've got to when you look at what time it is now so you can get into the content. But for those of you who are here, hopefully you can hear me. As usual, if you could let me know, Brian, we can hear and see the countdown. Fantastic. Thank you very much. So far, so good. I was chatting with Anthony before we went live with this. He's again, he's there to help me out just to make sure everything's running smoothly. And you know that you ever get that feeling you think, should I really have done this? Printing is quite a big topic. But I think we've got it. In fact, no, I'm sure we've got it. All right, we've got it. I'm literally just going to show you, as I explain when we get started, my process. I am certainly no colour expert, but what I can tell you is that the results I'm getting, I am incredibly happy with. And that's all that matters. So again, those of you new, hey, Ray's in the room. Hello, mate. All right. And Uncle Dave, everybody, David Elson is in the room. Give him a bit of love in the chat room if you could. That's my uncle. He's the one who's responsible for me taking up photography, because he himself is a photographer, a very good photographer, and it's his influence that got me doing this. So just give him a bit of love in the chat room if you could. Just say hi to Uncle Dave. Right, so I'm going to dive off just for a short while, but we're now at 3 minutes 4 seconds. The usual kind of thing is that when it gets to 30 seconds before we start, you'll start to hear music getting louder and louder. Then it gets to the 00, a couple of graphics go spinning around, and then you'll get my mug on the screen, and we'll just get cracking and see how it goes. So I'll be back with you in a few moments. I'll just keep an eye on the chat room, but I shall speak to you very soon. All right, just a few seconds to go before the music starts to kick in. And then, like I said, when it gets to 00, a couple of spinning graphics, and then we'll crack on. Lovely to see. Lots of love going towards Uncle Dave, Uncle Dave in the chat room. All right, so here we go. We are live. Thank you so much to everyone that's joining me tonight. Lots of stuff going on in the chat room, which is great to see, especially towards my Uncle Dave, who's in the room. Folks, tonight we're going to be going through some printing, okay? And I kind of got the thought, once I'd started to plan this, that have I bitten off more than I can chew to try and talk about printing, which is a nightmare, or can be a potential nightmare. Have I bitten off more than I can chew to talk about it tonight? And I don't actually think I have, because I've got loads of notes. There's kind of another board up here with loads of kind of workflow notes. But to be honest with you, it kind of goes through 3 steps. There's 3 particular steps I'm going to take you through that I've kind of gone through now to get what I think are, as far as I'm concerned, just perfect prints. I'm guessing I'm not the only one. In fact, I know that from the comments that came back. I'm not the only one that has had problems with printing. I tried it years ago. I could never get what I saw on my screen to match what I got in print in a piece of paper. So eventually I gave up. And that's when I started to use kind of outsourcing it. That's now been sorted thanks to a piece of kit. But one thing I'm going to have to say, and this is kind of a bit of a disclaimer, I guess, is that number one, printing is an investment. Okay, the printers themselves, not that expensive depending on what models you go, obviously. It's the ink that can be expensive, and also there's the paper side of things. So you've got to think, number one, is it really viable for you to do printing? How much printing are you doing? And would it work out cheaper if you sent away to get prints done? However, one thing I will say is you cannot beat the feeling of when you do a print. You've worked on an image, for you to be able to just go and press it to get a print out and then moments later have it in your hand is unbeatable. So I'm going to take you through that, but we're going to go through it in stages. All right, there will be lots of questions, I'm sure. I will get round to those. You've got Anthony and you've got Brian, who are kind of like some of my best mates. They're moderators in the chat room as well, so they'll kind of dive in if there's anything that's pressing, but we'll kind of take it through nice and steady. But first things first, when it comes to printing, I was always told the only thing you really have to do is make sure that your monitor is calibrated. So the first thing I want to show you is tell you about my monitor. Actually, before I do that, one thing I will say is this. There are going to be people out there who are color experts. They know everything about color. They know all these intricate little details and little tweaks that you can do. Listen, I'm just me. I've figured it out. And all I want to do is share with you how I am getting the best results. All right, so first things first, let's have a look at the monitor that I'm using, and that's this particular one here. Now, obviously, you can use whatever monitors you want. I'm now working with this one here, which is it's made by BenQ. It's a fairly new one. I think it's a pretty damn new model, and it's a 321C. So as you can see from the little spec that I've put up there, it is a 32-inch monitor. I like that. It's got a kind of hood or a shade that you can see that comes with it. That is really important to prevent light spill onto your screen, which can kind of give you a false impression. If you've got light landing on the screen, it can make your image appear brighter than it is, which is quite deceiving. It says it's 99% Adobe RGB. That's the color space that I work in. Now, I've spoken to BenQ at length about this, and what they say is that really their monitors are pretty much 100, but they're always going to kind of undersell it and sort of say it's 99%, just in case there's that little bit of a leeway that doesn't quite make it 100, but it is pretty much 100% uniform Adobe RGB. You'll see this one says it's uniformity technology, which means that you could take a reading across the whole of that screen, all different areas. You're going to get the same luminance, the same color value across the whole area of the screen. And what I really like about this one is there's a zero flare reflection screen as well, which is really, really cool. So that's that. That's the monitor that I'm, don't want to go on to that. That's the monitor that I'm currently using. But you use whatever monitor you want. But one thing to talk about is, number one, the first step to do is to calibrate your monitor. And there's lots of different devices that you can get that can do that. Companies by X-Rite will make one. You've also got something called the Color Monkey, all those kinds of things. The one I'm using is this one here, which is called the X-Rite i1 Studio. And what I like about this one is the fact that it will calibrate your screen. It'll also allow you to profile your paper. We'll talk about that in a very short while. And you can also do monitors, projectors, and so on. So it's kind of like a catch-all when it comes to calibration stuff. Now, obviously, you don't have to get that one. There are other ones you can get. You can see that's this i1 display here. and it's got this kind of weighted kind of belt on it, which is kind of like, as you hang that over the back of the monitor, that allows this to hang in the correct place when you're calibrating your screen. But you can get smaller devices, but number one, you must calibrate your screen. All right, so I guess let's have a quick look here. Let's open up the calibration software. So I'm using BenQ. Let's go to my desktop. I'm using BenQ. This is the picture, by the way, that I finished working on last night, and I have not done a print of this. So I thought tonight we will do that. Brian's just asking in the chat room, what is paper color sync? Just quickly, that's brand new technology that BenQ have introduced, whereby you can press a button on the monitor and that monitor will mimic the look of different papers. It's a lot more accurate than soft proofing within Lightroom. I'm not kind of using that just yet because the monitor like I've got now is pretty new to me, so I don't want to kind of dive into it too much, but it is brand new technology. It basically allows what you see on the screen to really mimic, the whole of the screen will mimic the look of the paper that you're using. We obviously will give you a very good idea of how your picture is going to come out. So this is a picture that we will end up printing. I'm going to do a live print when we get to that particular stage, which I'm quite looking forward to seeing this one come out. This is a World War II veteran by the name of John King, who served in the Royal Navy during World War II. Right, so I'm going to open up my calibration software. Now, BenQ come with their own calibration software called Palette Master, but I prefer to use the X-Rite software that comes with the i1 Studio that I particularly use. It's nice and simple. It allows me to really it dumbs down what I'm doing, and it just gives me the really good results. And this is kind of thing what I'm presented with first of all. So I'm going to choose on the left hand side here the device that I'm using. This is just my workflow, and over on the left hand side I'm going to choose display. So I'm telling it now I want to calibrate my display. And like with most calibration software, somebody's asking, will there be a tip sheet? Eddie, yes, there will be. You would ordinarily think, well, I'll just put it into the photo and I'll calibrate it. But those kind of presets here, the photo and the video calibration, they come with these settings already determined. Now, I don't do that. I choose custom. And what I'll do is the luminance or the brightness value that I want my monitor to be at, I set to 90. Okay, now you think, well, why 90? That is just trial and error. I find that because I like to work on my monitors when I've got literally hardly any light in this room at all. So I know it's quite dull, so I don't want the monitor to be too bright, okay, because that'll give me a false impression of what the picture's like. So I want the luminance to be fairly low, actually, about 90. That'll be fine for me. We've also got options in here where it says measure and adjust for flare. If you had a monitor that had quite a shiny reflective surface, you'd put a little tick in there, and that would kind of tell you, to tell the device to compensate for that. So let me just zoom in on this here, just so that you can see the settings again, just for your own reference. So I'm going to go for custom setting, leave the white point there at D65, so it's 6,500 Kelvin. The luminance value I'll have at 90, and the rest I'll just leave at the default just there. All right, cool. All right, so once you've done that, you're then going to click on next, and then that will start through the kind of device settings there. But then it's going to say to you, right, you need to position your monitor. Position the calibrator, and you can see here, in fact, if we just go back to my screen, if we just click next on here now, you'll see it will say that you've got to connect the device. I haven't got it connected. I've kind of done this already so I can show you on a video format. It says measure color patches. Some monitors have a thing called ADC, which is automatic display control. So when you are calibrating it, any adjustments that need to be made for it to be calibrated correctly, the software can dive into the monitor, and the monitor will make those adjustments for you. I personally prefer to do it manually, so I put the little tick where it says adjust brightness, contrast and RGB gain. So if your monitor allows you to adjust brightness, adjust contrast and adjust those three individual color channels, red, green and blue, then that's the one that you'll want to choose. But like I say, you'll then click next, and then it'll say, right, position the calibrator, and that's where you can see here. So this is my monitor. And you can see that I've got the position kind of in the middle, although on this particular screen it's not really that important because it's got that uniformity where the luminance values, the brightness values will be the same across the whole of the screen. All right, once we've done that, we'll then click on, let's go back to the screen here. Once we've done that, we'll then click on next, and then it'll start to do, start to go through the contrast check. And you'll just see here as it's going through it, you'll start to see a few variances in the actual luminance here values coming through, so the contrast values coming through. So it's just kind of seeing what is the contrast settings of your screen at the moment. So it's kind of going through all that. Then it will check the white point. And this is where you could then make some adjustments if need be. But hopefully this one will be pretty accurate as it is at the moment anyway. So you can see there you're going to get those couple of green ticks to say that the settings that you've currently got when it comes to the contrast and the white points are pretty much spot on. Those green ticks are giving you that kind of the thumbs up to say that's good. Once you've done that, and again this is just the calibration of the screen. Once you've done that, you'll then click next, and that's when you're going to start having to check on the luminance value of the screen, the brightness value, so it'll go through all of that. And again you've got that kind of green dial over on the left hand side there, and ideally you want it to get that green tick. And I don't know if you'll be able to see on your screens there, it says the target value is a luminance of 90, and you remember from the very start I said I want it to be 90 because I generally will use I'll do my editing with minimal ambient light in the room. I like it to be quite dark actually, so I'm just on the screen and that's it. And then you can kind of tweak it up and down with your brightness controls to kind of get it as near as damn it what the target value is if you're nowhere near it at the moment. So that's that. Then the last thing you're going to do, just for the calibrating side of things, is click on next, and that's when you will start to go through the actual reading. So you've got your monitor, your device in the center of your screen. It'll then start to monitor the colors. And this can take quite a while. You can see in the bottom right hand corner there it says processing patch, and it says a number of 118. So it's going to go through lots of different values of red, green, blue, and then white, all the way through the greys up until black, of which there will be 180 different variances in total of all of those. And I'll zoom back out in a minute and you'll be able to see that changing on the screen as we go through it. All right, so Graham Burton has just put in the chat room there, says he got a feeling the paper profile supplied by the paper manufacturer would solve the problems. I wish that was just the case. If only that was the case, Graham. It might be for you, but it certainly has never been for me. In fact, while that's just doing that, I'm not going to let you sit all the way through it, but we'll just put a little bit of music on, which is kind of relevant for how boring this can be when you're just sitting there waiting for it to calibrate. But once it's kind of gone through that, then you are calibrated. So let's just dive back to here. All right, so once it's done that, you will then be calibrated. So that's the calibration side of it. All right, pretty straightforward. I think the main thing to think about there is the settings that I use. Okay, you might be worth just trying those just to see how your screen looks to you when you're doing them. But I like the value of 90 for the brightness. So that's that. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. That's the step one. You always must calibrate your monitor. The second step is when we're going to start looking at the paper profiles, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But let's just have a very, very quick break, and then we'll carry on. All right, quick slurp of water just there. Okay, so we've calibrated the monitor. Nice and simple, nice and straightforward. The next thing we're going to do, or the next thing we generally get told to do, and this is what I was told so many times, and it's one of the reasons I stopped doing the printing, was I said, calibrate your monitor, then all you need to do is just choose the paper that you want to use, go to the paper manufacturer's website, and you can download their profile of that paper, put it into something like Lightroom, press print, and all will be good. However, it wasn't all good. It never ever seemed to work. So that just was never ever going to happen for me. I dread to think how much money I wasted trying to get it to work like that. So if that doesn't work, what options have we got? Well, I've written some down up here. You can download the profiles. That doesn't work. There is an option where there are companies out there that will send you an image of like color patches for you to print out on your printer setup. You can then send those to them, those printouts. They will create a profile for you. Then you can send it back to you, and then you can input that profile into Lightroom or whatever software you use when you're doing your printing. The other option is that you take control. But that's where the investment is, because you've then got to think about getting stuff like something like that i1 Studio, where you can profile your own papers. Sending it away like that is a good alternative. However, with me, I'm regularly trying different kinds of papers, and I don't want to have to wait days at a time before I can actually print on it. I just want to take control of it. And when I think about how much this cost, I think we're talking, it is an investment of, admittedly, maybe £300-ish, something like that for that. I can tell you now, I wasted way more than £300 on printing when I was trying to get it right. So, paper choice. This is where we're going to start to get into all the decisions that need to be made. So, paper. I generally use these papers here. This is just the A4 packs. I've got A3 plus packs as well. But I use a company called Permajet. I'm not paid by Permajet at all. Just happened to see them at a trade show once. Got chatting, liked the papers, tried them, and I got great results. But I use these papers here. Now, the one that I've been using, if you've been following what I do for a while, all the veterans portraits, up until very recently, and when I say very recently, I'm talking within the last couple of days, I was using this paper here. And this is Permajet's, it's called FB Gold Silk 315. All the details of this are going to be in the description part of the video anyway. FB Gold Silk. What I'm using now is called Portrait Rag 285. Two very, very different papers that give very, very different results. And this is the thing to bear in mind. Paper and ink will react differently depending on which kind of paper you're using. The FB Gold Silk, even though you're going to have your printer calibrated and you've profiled your papers, it will not look exactly as what it does on the screen, because this paper is designed to add a little bit of warmth to your picture. All right, colours and everything will be fantastic, the luminance will be fantastic, but it will add warmth. This one here is it's almost like it's got like a cotton paper, really beautiful fine art paper, very, very low contrast. Okay, so that again won't perfectly match, but it will make it look how it should do on this particular paper. All right, so what's the next thing we do then? Well, of course we're going to use I use this device for calibrating the actual profiling the paper, and I want to show you that particular process. So again, I'm going to go back to my software here that you can see. This is the same software as before. Let's just close it down for a second and I'll open it up. This is the X-Rite software. Because you remember from before, you had the choices. Let's just drag that over. You had the choices here of using the device, whichever one it is you want to use. You can see the different ones here actually. The i1 Display Studio, i1 here, then you've got the Colour Monkey behind. You can do calibrating your monitors, or you can do printer calibration, which is where you can do profiles for the paper. Now, if I just click on Colour Print, all right, then we get presented with this here. And this is where you choose what printer you're using, the paper size, and then the paper description. So in this particular area here, you could write down what kind of paper it is that you're using. Now, the reason I'm using A4 paper rather than the A3 is because it's cheaper. It's a cheaper print for me to print out this grid of coloured squares here, or coloured rectangles here. Rather than me wasting a big A3 page, I might as well just use a couple of A4s, because it's not going to be as expensive to do that. Once I've done that, I'll then click Print. All right, I'll then click Print. The printer will print that out, and I can show you that now actually. So if I just come back to here, and I've got an example of those here, paper charge 1. So that's the first print that it's given me. So what I will do then, once that's dried, and that's important, we must let this particular print dry. It says it recommended for 10 minutes. I leave it half an hour. Better safe than sorry. Nice and dry, it's sunk into the paper. There's not going to be any kind of like brighter areas. It's all kind of nice and settled down. Then you get this device and you start to scan it. All right. Now the way you do that, which number I've got to go to now, we'll press number 6. So this is what it's like when you start to scan the paper. So you go from from right to left, hold down the button, and as you do that. Now, as you're doing that, what will happen is you'll see as you're doing this, this is what you'll see on the screen. You already saw that grid. As you're going over and you get a successful reading of that particular line, you'll see that they all get these diagonal crosses through, and you'll hear like an audible beep. You'll hear a beep when it starts, and you'll hear a beep at the end. If it doesn't do it correctly, you get like a double beep, and you don't get those lines cutting through the colours. And that means that you haven't got the right, hasn't done a good reading. The reason you're doing this is because this software is kind of saying, right, just do me a favor, print out this colored grid of squares. I know exactly what the values of those are. It's then saying to you to scan them, because as you're now scanning them, the software is reading what the results are coming back, and it's going, well, I know that red should be this particular value, but yours isn't quite that value. Right, now I get to see where your printer and how your printer is behaving when it prints on that particular paper. So once you've done that, you'll then click next. You've printed out your first one, you've let it dry, you then scan it, you're happy, you'll then click next. In fact, I'll do the video on that, would be easier. Once we'll go there. So then you'll do another print. It'll then say to you, right, okay, now I need to do another print. I know what results you're getting with that first one. It'll then do some calculations and it'll come up with this next set, and it'll ask you to print those out as well. And then you go through the scanning process like you can see that's happening here. While that's running through, I am kind of keeping an eye on the right hand side just to see how things are going. Any questions that are coming through? Brian, you recalibrate your screen for every print. Brian, I generally, when people are asking how often do I calibrate my screen, I generally do it. I set mine for once a week, actually. It doesn't take that long, once a week. And then I'm happy with that. I never touch the buttons. I never make any changes to it. I'm always printing and working in exactly the same kind of lighting environment because I've got blackout blinds in the room that I work in. And then all I do then is, once I'm choosing a particular paper, once I've profiled it, I never need to do that again once I've got the profile. But we'll kind of cover that in a second. Now you'll see that on the screen, it's gone through that second scanning. It now knows, the software says, right, I know what you got in the first one, didn't quite like it. Right, now print this next one out. Right, now I know what adjustments I need to tell the printer to make to match the screen when you press print. All right, so it's done that. And you can see now we've got a little spinning thing. It's creating a profile that is a unique profile that will tell my computer, will speak to my printer and say, listen, when Glyn asks you to print on this particular paper, these are the compensations or the adjustments you need to make so that I know that the colours and the luminance is exactly how it should be. It's as simple as that. So let's just come back to my kind of thing here. Does that make sense? Okay, so you print out the first grid of squares. The software knows what colour these should be. You then scan them. The software, that scanner, will send the information back to the computer and it goes, okay, that red isn't quite the red it should be. Right, okay, I'll make a note of that. You got in the green, oh, that's not quite right. It'll then say, okay, now I've finished scanning that. It'll do some calculations and then it'll give you a new grid, a completely new grid there. And it'll say, okay, now I've made a few tweaks here. Now can you print this one out? And then you print it out and you scan it and it goes, all right, so we did the first one, that wasn't quite right. I've made some adjustments. You've just done the second one, made some more adjustments. Now I know what your printer and your computer need to do to get a great print. It then creates this profile, which is kind of full of mathematics. That, once it's created it, as you saw on the screen then, it then puts it in the correct folder on your computer so that you can then use that from something like Lightroom or Capture One or wherever you print from. All right, let's take a quick break and then we'll go into Lightroom to look at the printing. Alrighty, and we're back. So just kind of trying to take my time with this and checking on the actual chat room as well. Clearly there's going to be some questions coming through. Got one from Mike Stapleton. He says, do you print the colour squares for every different paper you use? Yes, absolutely. Because each paper will respond or react differently to your printer. So you're not going to use, in fact, I don't think I've got an example down here, but I did have an example. Yes, I have actually. I don't know how well this is going to come out, but I accidentally used the wrong profile 2 days ago when I was printing an image. I had to stop it mid-print. But look how bad. Can you see that? How bad that's come through? Can you see how yellow his skin is? Absolutely awful. That's because I used the profile that was created for the FB Gold Silk paper. I used that profile on the portrait rag, and that is how different it turned out. So you can see I quickly put the brakes on and got it to stop. So yes, what you need to do, and that's another reason why I'll get packs of the A3 Plus and I'll get the A4. You could get smaller paper and print out smaller grids, I guess. But yes, you're absolutely going to have to do that. And then Ray says, so you still need to install that profile into Lightroom. Depends what software you're using, Ray, but the X-Rite software, once you see it go through that profile, once you've finished doing it and you click next and you see the spinny disc and it's saying, right, now I'm going to create your profile. Once you see it say profile created, that is all you need to do. You don't worry about having to locate that profile and put it in the correct place. The software will automatically put it into the correct place for you. And that actually, almost like this was planned, leads us perfectly on to this bit here. Because let's go onto my screen now, because we've gone through all of that. We've calibrated the screen. We've profiled a particular paper. Now what do we do? Well, we're now, I'm going to show you how I do this using Lightroom, but I'm guessing in other software packages, it's going to be a similar kind of process, okay? But I'm in the print module here, and over on the right-hand side, right at the very bottom, you've got where it says print job. Now, let's just have a look at that profile thing here. This says color management, and here you've got the bit where it says profile. Now, you can see already that mine has got that PJ Portrait Rag 285 already in there. But it won't just automatically appear when you go to Lightroom. You do need to choose it. And all you need to do is just click on the little arrows to the right-hand side of where the profile is and then choose Other. Now, because the software has put the profile exactly where it needs to be, you'll find here all the profiles that are currently installed on your computer. Now, I've got this Canon Pixma Pro 10S. When that was installed, it gave me all these Canon profiles automatically. Now, I'm not using those because I don't use the Canon papers. But the one that you've just created, the profile that you've just created, you will find in here, and it'll have a checkbox next to it that isn't ticked. If you then put a tick into it and then click OK, it will then appear down here. And you can see now I've got a couple that I always choose from, Portrait Rag or Gold Silk. All right, now I think I've got a little video here which can kind of jump in just a little bit closer to show you those particular settings. So you can see down here, that's the particular area within Lightroom that you want to use. Now, let me just kind of talk about the settings that I'm using there at the minute. Print sharpening. Now, it depends what paper I'm using, okay? The FB Gold Silk has got just a little, it is not an exactly glossy paper, but there is an element of gloss to it, even though it's a small amount. So when it comes to the sharpening, I will tend to leave that where it says standard. However, the Portrait Rag, which is like a cotton-based paper, and there is absolutely zero shine on it, it's just got lots of kind of contour and texture to it. It does produce a very, very low contrast, unsharp image. So with something like that, when I'm printing on the Portrait Rag, I will boost up the actual sharpening and I'll put it at high. All right, but you can see there I'm choosing the printer profile. Intent. Now this is another one, intent. You've got the choice of either perceptual or relative. Now I always leave mine on relative, because relative will basically, without going into too much detail, I'm going to probably do a blog post on this as well. Relative will give you the most accurate representation of the colors that you have, that you want on your print. Perceptual is the kind of intent that you would use if you're trying to print an image that is way out of gamut, when those kind of colors are way off the scale. Perceptual is the one that you want to use, but relative is the one that even if it can't print a particular color, it will choose the relatively nearest one it can to it to try and match in what you want. And that's generally how I understand it. That's the one that I will choose. Everybody, Sandra Derry, that's my mom. She's in the chat room. Give her some love. All right, so that's that there. Let me just dive back to my screen now then. So let me just, while we're kind of doing this here, I am going to press print, and then I'm going to talk a couple of more things, the settings that I'm doing. So let's just dive to there, and I'm going to click on print just for now. And I did make sure I had ink in the printer before I did this. Can you imagine trying to do this and then you run out of ink as well? Right, okay. All right, so let's just, let's have a look if that's working. I don't think it is. Hold on a second. In fact, for the wonders of science, let's see if this works. Right, there we go. I've got my GoPro. Look at that. Multi-camming. We're multitasking tonight. There's the printer. You can see there's the paper. I didn't want to do this and kind of say, like, oh, look, by magic, here's a print. We are actually going to do a print. So you can hear it starting to whir. It's going to kick in a minute just to start doing the printing just there. Alrighty, so I'll kind of leave that just there as it is. So they can see there it's flashing. That is going to start doing a print. Alright, okay, come back to there. Alright. Okay, now one other thing I want to talk to you about. In fact, we'll just dive back onto this bit here because it kind of shows it a lot clearer. Can you see at the bottom where it says print adjustment, brightness and contrast? Now at the moment you've calibrated your screen, you've profiled your paper. When that does a print now, the colours will be perfect. But one thing or one complaint I always had when I was doing this printing was that, yeah, the colours are great, but my image seems a bit dark. You still do need to make a couple of tweaks to that, all right? Now you'll see here my settings when I'm using this particular paper. I have found that the best brightness value for me is 20. And because I told you already this particular paper is a very, very low contrast paper, I also add in a little bit of contrast during the printing process. And how do you come up with those numbers? Well, I'm afraid that's just something you're going to have to do a test. There is software that comes with the Canon printers where it will print out like a test sheet, if you like, of loads of different thumbnails of your image in all different kind of variations of brightness and sharpness and colour, and you just have to kind of say, well, I like that one and I like that one, so I think that's how it needs to be. But I don't really like that. It just seemed pretty much leaving things to chance. Whereas this here, once I've done a couple of test prints on small pieces of paper, either maybe even like an A4 and printed out a couple of 6x4s onto it of the same image, I then know how much brightness I need to add, and I generally go up in 5s. 5, 10, 15, 20 and so on. But this particular paper, in fact this particular printer, if I'm honest with you, this particular printer, I have found that no matter what paper I print on, it needs to have a brightness added of plus 20. I think that is more a case of how your printer is. Now I could go and get another Canon printer, an identical printer. That would probably give me a slightly different result. They're all different, they're all icons, they all have kind of, you know, different kind of personalities, if you like. But I found that the sweet spot for my printer, my Canon, needs to have a boost of 20 in the colour, no matter what paper I'm using. And then when it came to the contrast, with the FB Gold Silk, I don't add any. No contrast added at all. But I will add contrast to this one because it's a very low contrast paper. All right, let's just dive back to there. I'm kind of trying multitasking here, which is pretty difficult. We've already got 2 cameras working, so I'm really pushing the limits here of being a man and multitasking. But I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat room as well. Hopefully that's kind of making sense. Let's just have a quick look, see how the printing's going on. Let's just dive over. We can see that it's all kind of moving. We've got a bit of movement going on just over here. So I'll show you that once it's once it's finished. But I think what we'll do now then, let's just take a quick break. While we're taking a quick break, I'm going to keep an eye on the chat room, see what questions there are, and then we can dive back into it. But what I want to show you now is a little video that I've put together, completely nothing to do with printing whatsoever or photography. It's to do with a guy called Mark Billingham. And for those of you in the UK, you may well know Mark Billingham. He's a former regimental sergeant major in the SAS. He's on tour at the moment. He's on a TV program called SAS Who Dares Wins. And I was asked to do the promo for his tour that he's doing this year. So it's a completely different skill for me, doing a bit of that video work. But this is what we put together. So it was Dave who helped me do the filming for this. We used a little, my Sony, and Dave had one of those little DJI Osmo Pocket 4K little gimbal things. He walked around with that, and this is the results that we got with it. All right, I couldn't resist showing you that because I'm actually really quite proud of the fact that we've done that, and also kind of honoured to do that for Mark Billingham as well. Again, not related to printing, but he has got a book out at the minute, which I highly recommend. Again, I don't get any kickbacks for this. It is just a superb book, a really, really superb book. And my God, has he had a hard life. But it's an example of how you can turn around. There's none of that kind of fake it till you make it and you must believe and all that kind of stuff. This is just proper hardcore, just grit, damn gritting your teeth, determination to kind of get the best out of things. And my God, does he do that. So that's that. Right, so where are we now then? A couple of questions that have come through on the chat room. So my friend Steve Brazel, I mentioned about him in a minute. He mentioned that he's got a Canon 1000. That was a huge one. I did a podcast with him recently. It was sat on his shoulder, and then he told me he doesn't do much printing. It's a fantastic printer, but he says that he doesn't have to make any adjustments with the brightness for that particular one, but one that he used before he did. And there's Simon Birch he's had the same problem with his Epson. They're always dark. He just adds 25 brightness. And that'll probably be the same for them as well as it is for me, whereby no matter what paper you use that printer to print on, you'll always need to add that brightness. The difference will be what contrast you might need to add. But your colours will be perfect if you go through this process of calibrating it with whatever device and software you want, and also then profiling your papers if you want to take control. I can't really speak for what it's like when you do a test print and send it off for a company to bring you back a profile to put into your computer. I can't speak for that. It must work, but I like to do it myself because I like to have that control and that kind of flexibility that when I want to do a print, I can do a print on a new piece of paper. What else we got here? There's another question by Ray. Am I using a loop deck? No. Do I ever print directly from Photoshop? No. I always use Lightroom. And I think that's it. Right, okay, so a couple of things then. The printer's finished, so let me just show you this print. I've never printed this before. This is going to go to John, and you can kind of see just there. That's just come off. And now this is, I wish you could feel that. How that textured paper, there's absolutely, can you see when I move it? There's no shine, there's no reflection, there's no nothing. So this is why this paper needs to have that contrast added. But I'm looking at that now, and I am well happy. I am really, really happy with that. Absolutely over the moon. That is exactly, I don't know if you can kind of see it, but that what I get there is what I see on the screen, despite this being on a really textured, low matte, or very, very low contrasty kind of paper. So I'm very happy with that. Just following on from that, what do I do with it? Well, these are pictures that I'm doing for these veterans. So what I never wanted to do with the veterans, I know I'm going kind of slightly off topic here, is just to be able to say, like, there you go, there's your print, and hand over this print, and it's all kind of floppy. I wanted them to feel special, that they were getting something special. So I spoke to a friend of mine called Robin, who owns a Framers, and he taught me how to do the mounting of these images. And bear in mind, you can get these mounts here. So the images that I print out for the veterans are 11 inches square. I like using the square format because I just think they look really good. And it's not, very much when I was doing all the research for this project, that a lot of old images were of that format. And then I have this mount added to it. And you can get these mounts. If you get friendly with a framer, you can buy the mounts off them. And it's a 2.5 inch mount all the way around. So the whole thing is 16 inches square. And those mounts cost me £3. And he kind of showed me how to do it. So there's the front, obviously, where you got the aperture that the picture is, and then you got the back board to it as well. And you can see that they then get put into a cellophane, kind of nice clear cellophane cover, which is biodegradable, I hasten to add, and I get my logo on it. And then if I can't physically take it to them, there's a company I found which make bespoke boxes. So you can put in the measurements of what your item is that you want to put into a box, and then you can buy these boxes which fit perfect. And I just kind of like this. So then I print out the label with the logo on it, and it arrives, and it just kind of makes them feel kind of special, I guess. So that's what I do with that. Now let's just kind of zoom back here for a second, because there are some more questions coming in. I hope you saved this video. It will go up. This video here will be up on the YouTube channel once it's all kind of done and dusted, and it takes a bit of time to put it back up. Doesn't brightness and contrast depend on the light you are viewing the print under? Yeah, it does. Absolutely it does. Are you talking about the actual image here? Because I'm looking at this in the normal light now, and it looks perfect. But when I'm editing, I'm in pretty low light anyway. But then I've compensated for that by bringing down the brightness or the luminance of my screen. All right, the screen I'm looking at now doesn't really light me up. It's really kind of low kind of lighting on it. ICC profiles that come with some papers. Marina, I don't know where you came in on this particular this particular video, but the ICC profiles, they don't work for me. If you're talking about the profiles you can get when you buy a paper, you can then go to the company site to download them. Does not work for me. And the reason for that, if we think about this, they've created the profiles by printing out stuff on a completely different printer. But the fact that every printer, as I see it, and it's kind of proven that from the chat room there, is every printer, even if it's the same model, reacts just a little bit different. Okay, so I'm not going to put a profile into my computer for my printer to use. It's been made from a different computer by printing out on another printer. It just doesn't seem to match up. Do you know what I mean? So I know that I'm going to kind of sort of rule out any issues if I say, right, I've got the paper, I'm going to scan it into my computer. My computer is going to produce a profile that it's going to go onto my printer. So the whole workflow's there and everything seems to be seamless. And I mean, you know, I couldn't be happier than that. It's what you can't beat the feeling that when you want to print something and you press print, you can just confidently walk away knowing that what's going to turn out is going to be bang on. That is just the best feeling. It really, really is the best feeling. Did you say, Deb is saying, did you say the whole thing is 16 inch? Don't know why I'm laughing. But yeah, let's have a look here. We're talking about this, Deb. Yeah, the whole thing, once it's in the mount, is 16 inches square. And it's just a nice size and people just do seem to love it when it all comes through on that. So, do you know what I mean? There's the three things there, really. I don't know. I mean, there's a guy, a friend of mine called Jamie. Jamie Peters, I don't know if he's in the chat room or not, but he's responsible for me doing this because he kind of suggested it last time when I was doing a YouTube video, and he says, how about doing something on printing? I was going, yeah, I'll do that. And then afterwards you're thinking, blimey, that's a big topic to talk about. But I'm kind of hoping that I've simplified it. There are the 3 steps to it. You've got to calibrate your screen. I think you've got to have profiles for the paper, be it you doing it yourself or you doing the test print, sending that off for them to create a profile for it and then send it back. But I do prefer to do it all myself, so I keep everything in house. So if anybody's got anything, you know, if there's a mistake, it's me that's to blame, rather than me kind of sending off for something, waiting, getting all excited for it to turn up, and when it does turn up, it isn't right. I hate that. I really, really do hate that. Jamie is in the room. Now, Jamie is one of the British Army photographers. So do us a favour, if you're on Facebook, go over to the Army Photographers Facebook page and check it out. Also, actually, that's good you reminded me there that you were there, Jamie. While I'm thinking about it, our podcast, our new episode that went live today, me and Dave have recorded an episode where we're talking about all kinds of stuff. But one of the topics we talk about is to do with the British Army photographers and the awards that I was at recently, did all the judging. And we talk about the images, talk about all kinds of things, what that was like, what the experience of seeing all these different images was like. So have a listen to it, and also check out the British Army photographers on Facebook, because they have just got some insanely good images. And one thing that you've got to realise with these folks is not only are they technically skilled, but there's also the creativity, and their range of skill varies from, I don't know, maybe photographing a dignitary that's coming, to then also having, you think that's one extreme. The other extreme is photographing in a potential war zone. So the breadth of skill that these folks have to have is just incredible. So do us a favour, go over to them, check them out, and give them a follow on across social media as well. So that's that. What else? Got any other questions? The video is going to be there. What brightness do you calibrate your screen to? Marina, go back. Marina, I guess you didn't come right at the start, but when I'm going through the calibration, I set it to a luminance value. It's 90 is what I'm looking for, but that's because of the environment that I'm in. You need to test it out. I know that a friend of mine, Frank Doroff, I think he sets his to around about 110, 120. I tried that, didn't seem to work. I wasn't getting what I see on the screen on print to be the same, so I've lowered the value of my screen brightness to 90, and now it's absolutely bang on. So that's that. What else have I got to show you? Oh yeah, right, I was recently on this. All right, so this is a podcast by a super guy called Steve Brazel, called Behind the Shot. He is one seriously talented guy. Great photographer anyway, but he actually, we had a good old chat with him, and he was talking to me about photography. He wants to know, his podcast, Behind the Shot, is really digging deep about a particular image, kind of trying to reverse engineer it. What did you do? How did you do this? What are the settings? Why did you have those settings? There's no point asking, you know, what F number if you don't understand why. And Steve really did dive into that. And he was asking me questions about a particular picture that I took of a World War II veteran called Harry Billinge. Absolutely loved it. It's in video format and in audio format, depending on what you prefer. So give that a look. Behindtheshot.tv. It's on podcasts. It's in all those kind of great places. What else can I tell you about? I think that's pretty much it. I am going to hang around in the chat room because I guess with a topic like this, there's a lot to think about. Need to remind you that this book is out there. This is a great book by Dave, all about using InDesign. And because obviously I'm going back to using Mac again, I can no longer use Publisher. Microsoft Publisher. I'm afraid to admit I was using that. So I'm now trying to learn InDesign as well. That's in the 25th hour of the day that I get. But there you go. So let's have a look here. Any more questions? No, I think I'll call it a day there. I'm going to bid you farewell. I really do hope that was helpful. The video will be up on my YouTube channel. I'm going to produce a tip sheet for this, which will be a free download on the new website, which I'm hoping is live next week. So that'll be there as well. But I'll let you know. If you're part of my email group, you'll get to have that come through anyway. But thanks for sticking around. That is it. I'll stick around for some questions, but for now I'm going to leave you with another little video, which is the poem that David Edwards, the World War II veteran, did all about Normandy.
Khaki-clad, we lie in wait, close by the embattled Norman shore, each man conscious of his fate to weave a tapestry of war in Normandy. Soon the evil roar of 1,000 guns defiles the summer sky, as fate decides which of its sons will be the next to die in Normandy. Brave citizens of France with loyal hearts face the hell of conflict loosened from its chain. Our steadfast families play their lonely part, suffer death or misery or pain in Normandy. No redcoat tale of glory here we tell, where every yard of bocage takes its toll. The thrill of action soon loses all its spell, and war seals horror in our soul in Normandy. Then fear takes second place to pride. The tired and mighty armies pause before we all move up for the next assault in the noble fight for peace and freedom scored in Normandy.